All right, so with the remaining time left here on this Thursday edition of Bang the Book Radio, I'm going to take a look through some of the college games that we didn't get to here with our army of guests earlier on throughout the week. And of course, we covered a lot of ground there with Brad Powers, but still several games. Again, just always so many games in the college football market to get to. Try to get to all of them with Brad because he's got that newsletter. He's got a lot of that good information right in front of him. But, again, we've got so many college football games to try and get to each and every week. And that's why I finish up this Thursday show covering some of the ground that we didn't get to here over the course of the week. So we start with game 109-110, Illinois and Purdue. Purdue, 9.5-point favorite, line as high as 10 out there in the marketplace, 10 at some of the sharper offshores as well, like a Pinnacle, like a Matchbook. And look, obviously this is such an interesting spot for a team like Illinois, coming off of a win that they certainly did not expect to get there against Wisconsin. Illinois, a team that, really over the course of the season hasn't played particularly well. They haven't had too many close calls, a lot of blowouts. They lost to Eastern Michigan, blown out by Minnesota, did come back against Michigan, but then eventually got beaten by 17 there in that one. Now they're on the road at Purdue. And this isn't a rivalry game or anything like that. You do have Rutgers on deck for Illinois. And I think that you kind of take one peek ahead to that game here if you're Illinois, because you know that that's another good chance at a win. Now, if you win this game and win that game, all of a sudden you get to 5 wins. Maybe you can beat Northwestern in the finale to get to a bowl game. But I think that this is a really tough spot for Illinois. You've got a Purdue team that, quite frankly, has played pretty well the last 2 weeks. The offense against Maryland looked really, really good with Jack Plummer. And last week against Iowa, look, Purdue was an 18.5-point dog or so in that game. Plummer throws for 300 yards. He was 30 of 50, did have to throw a lot in that game, but seems to be developing more of a rapport with the receivers. Iowa only outgained Purdue by 2 yards in that game. They had the football for 35-38. Purdue, a lot of tempo. They run 68 plays in their 24 minutes, so they really tried to pick up some ground, tried to shore some things up. And perhaps more importantly, the Purdue defense played pretty well in that game, holding Iowa to 3.1 yards per carry, holding them to 362 yards for the game. There were a lot of questions about Purdue coming out of that Penn State game, really with their full body of work here so far this season. Defense looked better. Offense looks better with Plummer. Even though my line on this game is Purdue -7, I agree with the line move here in the sense that Purdue does appear to be a team trending up. Now, if the only reason for the line move is because Illinois is in a bad spot, in a letdown, I don't think that's the correct way to look at this game. It is a factor, certainly. Situational spots are always a factor. They're not the end-all, be-all, but they're always a factor in your handicap. But I think this is just a case where Purdue is playing better. Purdue looks like a better team here. And again, maybe not getting the respect for losing that game to Iowa last week. But again, they were an 18 or so point underdog. My line was actually 20.5 in that game. Didn't wind up playing Iowa. But Purdue greatly exceeded expectations, only losing by 6, being right in that game for the most part. So do like Purdue minus the 9.5 a little bit here. Obviously at 10, it's not as palatable. But at 9.5, I think Purdue is potentially worthy of a look here this weekend. Game 111-112, San Jose State and Army. The markets have kind of been looking for a reason to fade San Jose State here on the season, because when you look at this San Jose State team, they are number 1 in the country with San Diego State in turnover margin. And when you look at the number of turnovers and takeaways that they have, they're tied for second, trailing only Cincinnati, who has 19. So people are kind of looking to go against San Jose State a little bit here, sort of looking for some regression in that turnover margin department. This week, though, they're taking money. And that is extremely telling to me, because this is a horrendous spot for San Jose State. You're playing an option team. I know you've already played one in Air Force, but you got gashed on the ground by Air Force in that game. They covered the number because Air Force went for a 4th down at their own 22-yard line, didn't get it. San Jose got in the back door. I believe that number was 20, and they lost by 18 or 17, something like that. Should have been an Air Force cover in that game. But with that, San Jose State taking money here, down from 10 to 9.5 or 9. Again, not a significant move by any means, but the context of this game makes it pretty significant. The markets have been trying to bet against San Jose State with that turnover margin. Army's triple option. And this is a long trip up to West Point, New York to take on Army. And it's an early kickoff, 12 o'clock Eastern time. Everything about this spot absolutely reeks for San Jose State. And yet, they're taking money here in this game. That's obviously sharp money. The public not invested in a game like that. So, again, while it's not a significant move to go from 10 to 9, the context of this move is greatly significant. Total up from 50.5 to 54, kind of correlated to San Jose State coming down a little bit because Josh Love, who we talked about in the previous segment, has played so well here for San Jose State so far this season. So, again, sneaking suspicion here that, at least according to the market, San Jose State is the right side. My line is 12.5. I will not be playing this game. But again, very interesting to see this line coming down, given the very compromising spot it looks like the Spartans are in. So that's an interesting line move there in a game that's probably going to be a throwaway for a lot of people out there. Boston College and Clemson. Clemson a 34-point favorite in this one, game 115-116. Total 58.5 or 59 here in this game. My line on this one's actually 38.5. And you've got a Boston College team here without Anthony Brown. You're kind of curious to see how they do offensively over the long haul. You know, in one game, anything can happen. A guy can play really well. A guy can have kind of an out-of-body experience and go out there and just look really, really good. Last week against NC State, Boston College's offense looked pretty good, but they ran the football down NC State's throat. 429 rushing yards on 60 carries against NC State. A bad look for Dave Doran's team, and in particular Dave Doran's defense. Boston College is not going to run the football like that against the Clemson Tigers. So again, this is one of those spots where you kind of have to look at this game and say, how many points do I need from Boston College to cover this number? Because between the side and the total, it implies that Clemson gets up into the 40s. Can you get Boston College to, 17 points, something like that? I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be the case here. Clemson seems to have kind of flipped that switch a little bit, trying to get back into the team that everybody expected them to be. So I don't have too many thoughts on this game, but I think it's very tough to take Boston College, given the inexperience at quarterback, given that they're not going to be able to run the football the way that we saw them last week. Game 123-124 is pretty interesting here. I originally had this one on the list to chat about with Brad Powers, but in the interest of time and trying to get to some of the other games, specifically the marquee games at the bottom of the board, I took this one off the list. But game 123-124 is UCF and Temple. UCF, a 10.5 or 11-point favorite here. Total in the 60 or 60.5 range. And you've got a UCF team here coming in with some extra rest. And that can only help because they didn't play at all in the second half last week against East Carolina. Had the bye the week before. So they put that game last week away, took it very easy in the second half. That's why I say extra rest, despite not actually having a bye there. So they're in really, really good shape for this one. Temple is a team that has been so up and down here so far this season. They get that win over Maryland when everyone thought Maryland was the flavor of the month. Then they lose to Buffalo the following week. Nice win over Georgia Tech in the Jeff Collins Bowl. Beat East Carolina by 10. Beat Memphis at home. And then lose to SMU in pretty lopsided fashion in last week's game on the road in Dallas. So what do they do here in this spot? Because you've got a team that's played down to its competition, losing to Buffalo. You have a team that's played up to its competition, beating Memphis. And a team that's played down to better competition against SMU. So what is Temple at this point in time? I don't know, but I agree with this line move here with UCF getting bumped up into a bigger favorite. Even though my line is 8, even though my line is about where this game opened, I think just situationally, UCF is in a much better spot. It's hard for Temple to trade scores with teams. The reason why they were able to beat Memphis is because they held Memphis to 28 points. And the reason why they held Memphis to 28 points, well, look into the box score. Very important to check out the box scores, dig into the box score study. Memphis had 4 turnovers. Memphis had 492 yards in that game, but they had the 4 turnovers. They were -2 in turnover margin. That's how Temple won that game. If UCF doesn't turn the football over, they could boat race Temple here. And that's what my expectation for this game would be. So even though my line is 8, closer to the opening number, I agree with the line move here on UCF. Maybe UCF a little bit better than I'm giving them credit for. Maybe Temple not as good as I'm giving them credit for. But I agree with this line move here with UCF taking the money up to a 10.5 or an 11-point favorite. And I do think that they do wind up covering that number. Game 127, 128, Indiana and Nebraska. Indiana opened a 2-point favorite. This line has flipped now with Nebraska a 2.5-point favorite. Total down from 55 to 52. Nebraska, the bye week came at a good time for them. They could get Adrian Martinez right. They could maybe start making a push here in the latter portion because they do still have some very big games coming up against West Division opponents like Wisconsin, like Purdue, like Iowa. Now at this point in time, they are 2 games behind Minnesota, and Minnesota also has the tiebreaker now in the Big Ten West. So it's not an ideal situation for Nebraska at all, but the bye helps. You know, getting Adrian Martinez back should help if he's going to be able to go in this game. Indiana's not a team that a whole lot of people like here. They are 5-2, but they've beaten Ball State, Eastern Illinois, UConn, Rutgers, and then the win at Maryland. And Maryland's just not a very good team, as we've seen here of late. So I think this line move does make sense a little bit here with Nebraska a favorite. My line has Nebraska minus half a point, so I'm basically in the pick'em range for this one. You do worry about Nebraska's offense. You worry about Martinez or Vedral, whoever winds up playing this game. But the line move would probably suggest that it's likely to be Martinez, who has at least looked a little bit better than Vedral looked last week. But this is not a game I have any interest in touching, not a game that I like from either side here. Game 131, 132, Iowa and Northwestern. We don't see many college football games with a total of 37.5, but we've got one here in this game. Iowa, a 10.5-point road favorite for this trip to Evanston. And again, what everybody remembers about Northwestern is that they just got clobbered by Ohio State at home. Ohio State's a legitimate number 1 team in the country, according to myself and Brad Powers. Iowa is just really struggling. You know, they had all kinds of problems with Iowa State. They blow up Middle Tennessee State. Good win for them. But then 3 points against Michigan, 12 against Penn State. Struggling last week as an 18-point favorite against Purdue. Northwestern, say what you will about their offense. Outside of that game last week against Ohio State, their defense had played very, very well this season. And I get it, Northwestern, among the worst teams in the country in yards per play. I think they are the worst team in the country in yards per play here. They're tied with Old Dominion with 3.79, so that's obviously not a very good look. But defensively, they're still pretty good. And if your expectation here is for a very low-scoring game, which is what this total certainly implies, you start looking for reasons to take Northwestern. With that 10.5 spread, with Fitzgerald as a dog, with the way that that defense generally tends to play. So, again, I mean, I would have to look Northwestern here in this one. I don't love it. My line is 9.5 here. And again, my raw power rating is 9.5. When you adjust for a total this low in the 37 range, my number is probably more like 8 or 7.5, something like that. So again, at the 10.5, you have to look Northwestern here in this one, but not a play I would be all that eager to go ahead and make. Syracuse and Florida State. Florida State 10.5-point favorite here in this one. Total on the rise up into the 60 range. Syracuse should have gotten beaten badly by Pitt last week. Pitt really let them hang around. Gave up the 94-yard touchdown catch. Tommy DeVito hurt. The Welch kid came in, played pretty well. Florida State, look, can they get a pass rush? Because Syracuse has allowed a ton of sacks on the year. Pitt has 36 sacks. Florida State here on the season, well down the list. They have 17 in 7 games. Can they get that pressure? If they get that pressure, they can win this game comfortably. If they don't, well, that's where you start looking at the over, where you start looking at Syracuse maybe being able to cover the number. If I had to do anything with this game, I probably would look at that over because I don't know if Florida State's pressure will get there. My line is 10 on the game, so I'm right there with the market. I don't set my own totals projections. Maybe I should start trying to do that. But Florida State minus 10, minus 10.5, about right for the number here, so I don't have too many thoughts on that one. Game 137, 138 here, Liberty and Rutgers. Liberty a 7.5-point favorite, total 44.5. Look, and the reason I'm kind of at a loss for words here is, the Big Ten wanted Rutgers. They wanted that New York, New Jersey metro area presence. And now Rutgers is an absolute laughingstock. Liberty is laying more than a touchdown on the road against Rutgers. And Liberty has actually played pretty well here a little bit later on into the season. My line on this game is only Liberty -4. But ever since Hugh Freeze kind of got over some of his medical issues, Liberty has played better. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Liberty goes out there and blows out Rutgers. And it's a sad state of affairs for the State University of New Jersey, but, man, I can't take them here in any context whatsoever. It would be Liberty or nothing for me, even though my power rating suggests Rutgers is the side. Rutgers' offense is just abominable. They're 127th in the country in yards per play, and they will keep dropping as they play some more of their conference games. So it's a bad look for Rutgers right now. California and Utah. Utah, a 21.5-point favorite. Very low total here of 36.5. How about this, man? A 3-touchdown favorite and a total in the mid to upper 30s. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. My line on this game is only Utah -16. Utah has played very, very well here of late. Obviously, you wonder how Cal's going to score in this game. Cal's defense is pretty good. It hasn't been as good of late as it was earlier on in the season or last year. Cal's defense is pretty good. At 21.5 with a total like this, I've got to look Cal. I don't love it by any means, but that'd be the only way that I could look to play that one. Game 143-144, Wyoming laying yet another big number here, 14 against Nevada. Another low total, another total moving down from 45.5 to 43.5. Wind expected in Laramie. Wyoming doesn't throw the football very well anyway, so the wind doesn't bother them. The wind can very much bother a Nevada team that's trying to run kind of a modified air raid offense there with Hal Mum's son. So Nevada kind of up against it here, playing a pretty good Wyoming defense, bad weather conditions, still couldn't lay 14 with Wyoming. I'd have to take Nevada, if anything, if you're in college football ATS pool or something like that. But it's so interesting to see these very big numbers with Wyoming, a team that in most cases probably doesn't deserve it. And even this week, my line only 9.5 for the Cowboys. So again, maybe I haven't downgraded Nevada enough. Malik Henry out now to focus on academics. It's a weird spot for this Nevada program right now. Again, if I had to take something, though, it would be them, but I don't have any strong opinion on that game. Western Kentucky and Marshall. This one's really interesting. Marshall, a 6.5-point favorite at the open, now a 5-point favorite, total of 45. Western Kentucky's defense is very, very, very good. They're a team I wrongly had power rated coming into the season, hadn't adjusted quickly enough, gave Western Kentucky a big adjustment last week, and my line is 4 on this game. So I don't have any thoughts on this one, but I just wanted to point that out, that Western Kentucky's defense is legit. They are a very good unit, top 25 in the country in yards per play allowed. You can say what you want about the strength of schedule that they've played. It's probably not as good as the strength of schedule that Memphis has played, but still, this Western Kentucky team, very legitimate defense. I think it's tough for Marshall to get margin here. I think Western Kentucky plus the 5 or so probably would be the right side. Do like the under a little bit, and again, keep in mind that maybe some weather forecast issues could wind up keeping that game a little bit closer. Game 155-156 here, Colorado State, Fresno State, another total moving down, 59 to 56.5. Fresno State, a 14.5-point favorite here. I do actually like Colorado State a little bit in this game. Colorado State on the season, we talked about this on Monday's show with Kyle Hunter, 22nd in yards per play, but 65th in points per game. They've lost 12 of their 17 fumbles here so far. Now, Marvin Kinsey, their leading running back, is suspended for this game. But Marvin Kinsey, their leading running back, would have more fumbles than 103 FBS teams. So, yeah, he's had some big plays, but he also doesn't take care of the football. Maybe Colorado State, a better team, having to throw it around a little bit more. My line is right at 14 here, but I do like Colorado State in this one, getting the 14.5. Fresno State, still a well-coached team, but they don't have the same explosiveness on offense. Defense has regressed a little bit as well. And also Patty O'Brien takes better care of the football than Colin Hill and some of the other guys that Colorado State has had, take care of the football. So I like Colorado State here plus the 14.5. Not the strongest of plays for me this weekend, but it is one that is on my radar here, to be sure. One of the plays I do like this week, Central Michigan over Buffalo. Run through a couple more of these games here. I think this 171-172 FIU and Middle Tennessee State game is really interesting because FIU is starting to look like the team that we expected coming into the season. They're a road favorite here in Murfreesboro against Middle Tennessee State. And look, FIU's played some bad teams here of late. They beat UMass, they beat Charlotte, they beat UTEP all at home. What do they do now going on the road against Middle Tennessee State? I'm not sure, but they're starting to play better. They look more like that team that we expected them to. James Morgan looks better. My line on this game actually does have Middle Tennessee State about a half-point dog. So no line value on this one, but keep an eye on both of these teams. Middle Tennessee State has been a sharp darling to a degree. FIU, we're seeing some adjustments in their numbers where they're getting a little bit more respect. So keep a close eye on that one. That's a game that could be pretty interesting there. Texas State and Arkansas State game 201-202. One of my biggest overlays of the week here is on this game. I like Texas State. Even though Gresh Jensen not going to be able to start for this game, Texas State saying that he is available. Tyler Vitt will get the start. Arkansas State's just given up so many points this year, and their offense is still pretty good. But Texas wants to play high-scoring games. They want to run a lot of plays. They're going to get Arkansas State in a spot where Arkansas State's defense has played very, very poorly this year. Texas State, off a little bit of rest. I like Texas State here getting the 12, 11.5 that's out there. Liked it more at 13.5. My number on the game is actually 7.5. So I got a big overlay here with Texas State. I do like them in that Sun Belt game there down in Jonesboro against Arkansas State. Finally, one more game here, and we ran very, very long with today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. A lot of college football, a lot of ground covered today. Arizona State and UCLA. Arizona State a 4-point favorite in this game, total of 55.5. My line on this game is only 2.5 with Arizona State a road favorite, but I do like the Sun Devils here in this game. So I'd go against my power ratings in this one. I just think Arizona State is the all-around better team. That Colorado loss was surprising. They win a lot of close games. They're just a better defensive team. They have more offensive weapons. Herm Edwards is a better coach than Chip Kelly, and I think Herm Edwards, his team has really bought in to what he's sold them. And for Chip Kelly's team, week in and week out, I'm just not quite sure. I don't give UCLA a lot of credit for beating Stanford last week because Stanford and the third-string quarterback there in Jack West, he just didn't look good at all. He didn't look the part. So I don't give UCLA too much credit for that win. I think the market is giving UCLA too much credit for that win. Arizona State getting shut down by Utah, they've kind of become a little bit of an afterthought. Jaden Daniels had 25 passing yards in that game last week. Arizona State will have more success on offense in this game. So I like the Sun Devils here, minus the 4. There are some 3.5s available out there as well. Obviously, get a 3.5 if you can, but I like Arizona State here in this one. I just don't think UCLA is consistent enough, whereas we've seen Arizona State be very, very consistent over the course of the season.